right, so today we're going to be talking to everybody out there about what we've been doing all summer. World Policy Partners has been out and about. But before we get there, Jason, what is happening on the farm while you're all over the place?
Well, as we're out and about, we were able to see some horrible flooding on the way up here. And so we're coming to you from South Dakota, Fort Pierre. And as you know, this summer has been lots of flooding and severe weather events. And so it's really catastrophic just looking at the crops as we drive up here. Hard to see all the damage.
Yeah. Well, just since we've been here, that massive thunderstorm that came over and woke both of us up the other night. Holy crap. That was
Oh, it
loud.
just shook the whole hotel. It was
The whole place.
unbelievable.
Yes, we've been lots and lots of storms. So today what we're going to be talking about is just a little bit more about what have we been doing this summer and catch everybody up on some of the different articles and the different podcasts that we've both been involved in. And then this is a two-part series. The second part, we're going to talk specifically about all the travel that's been happening out because we've been everywhere. So to get us started today, Jason, you were just in the USA Today about farmer suicide. Talk to us about that. Why is that topic important and how did that happen?
Well, I know. Well, talking about emotional well-being, behavioral health, it was just a great opportunity. And so Tony Lays, the
Yeah.
reporter, he does stuff for KFF Health now,
Yeah.
called me up, but got connected to me through another partner. And lo and behold, he came out, spent the whole day
Awesome.
on my farm. He really wanted to get to know what farmers go through, what they experience. And, I had a hard time getting rid of him. He wouldn't leave the farm that day he came out. We had a great time. And I thought it really turned out great. It was a great article, a really great piece to really think about awareness and stigma in rural communities.
Yeah, I know when you allow my nephew to come, he never wants to leave the farm either. So they both having a good time.
I know he keeps coming back too,
Yeah, my nephew's wins the next season coming again. So in that article, one of the big things that I thought was a key takeaway is that a couple of things, but farmers are struggling with asking for help, but then not really connecting well to that therapeutic professional. So not really feeling connected to human professionals in that space. So what were your thoughts on that and how did you guys pull that apart in the article?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, part of it is really that disconnect of understanding. And really it's a cultural awareness, right? We need to think about everyone in the context of where they live, and the work that they do. And farming and ranching is unique
Yeah.
in those stressors, both the financial stressors and then that connection to family and the land or the animals that you're raising. And if you don't understand those unique stressors, it can be hard to make a connection or to feel like you're understood when you're talking to a healthcare professional
Right.
or a therapist. And so I think starting to have that awareness, especially for professionals to have that awareness that it's different than just going to a job and going home at night. When you
Right.
live at your
Right.
job, when
Right.
it's when you're part of it, 24 hours a day, when you can't control weather events that may have a huge outcome on your crop production, or there's catastrophic like avian flu,
Yeah.
in chickens or dairy cows like we're seeing today. Those things can be game changers. On the news this morning, up here in South Dakota, reporting on, someone who was farming for 20 years and making it, but they lose everything this year. They could lose their entire farm and their way of living.
Wow.
And so just think about one weather event, we're all one weather event away from losing something. In my family, it's been going on since 1886.
Right. And I would imagine just the thoughts of being responsible, the responsibility level of that, of being a
Right.
family generational,
Right.
family owned business. And
Right.
you might be the end of that is a lot of pressure and it probably adds to what's going on in those communities. So in the article, did it talk about some of the resources and some of the things that farmers and ranchers should do if they're struggling in this space?
Absolutely. It did it. It talked about some of the resources at Iowa State University. And, we both know Dr. David Brown.
Mhm.
We worked with Dr. Brown before. And so there's so many resources out there, places to read about what's going on. Of course, 988 and your local community resources. But, I really think about those, who's doing things specific for farmers. So, there's some good programs through Farm Bureau, and really seeking out folks who understand rural communities.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm glad to hear that there was some takeaways from that because it's a hard topic and there might be people out listening today that are really struggling, especially now that we're doing another round of big flooding everywhere, that there's going to be people listening that are really struggling. And so we will link this article to the show notes so you can read more about it. But also just know that if you're out there and you're struggling and this is a hard conversation, the 988 is available. If you don't know what 988 is, you can call, you can text it, you can chat. And you can get connected to any kind of resources that you might need. You might not be feeling suicidal today, but maybe you know somebody who might be, challenged with that. And 988 is going to be a good partner. So
Well,
we'll link that in the
and
notes
think
as
about
well.
if you're a professional listening to this, do you have it posted around your office? Is it posted around your healthcare facility, right? Do you make those resources? Remember, people need to see things over and over again to
Yeah.
remember them. So, think about what your resource lists look like. Think about where you have things posted. Frequently that's a conversation we have when we're out consulting and meeting with folks is like, well, how do you share that with people? And sometimes we find out it's not very clear
Yeah.
how things are shared.
All right. So the next topic is we were talking about podcasts, and I was asked to be on a podcast this summer. It's a business spotlight. So we kind of came at it differently. But in the Des Moines area, there's a company that's working on spotlighting businesses and just telling the story about the business. So and we have a really interesting story about this business. For those that don't know, my business started over a decade ago now. And when I came out of the legislature, and I was a solopreneur all by myself for a really long time. And one of the lessons I learned being a solopreneur is you can only go so high by yourself. You hit a money cap, you hit sort of a threshold of how much work you can do on your own and still have fun, which is the point of working for myself, right? It's like if it's not
Right.
fun.
That's the only reason.
And
Go
you get
on.
to where you're working all by yourself and for too many hours, and it was just as bad as if I was doing something else. And so then you and I started partnering together probably now, what was it, through the pandemic. So we've been
Right.
working together now
4 years.
4 years.
4 years plus.
Right.
Yeah.
And then started just subcontracting everything to you
Right.
for a chunk of time. So then now, close to 2 years ago, we decided to form a partnership.
Right.
And so the partnership has been a lot of fun because now I don't have to do it by myself. It's way more fun doing this together than by ourselves. But also, it's given me the opportunity now to step out now that the governor has appointed me in parole to work at the parole board. That never would have happened as a solopreneur.
And we bring other partners in as we need to for special projects. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And a great business model because it lets us grow, as we need to grow and contract as we need to contract in a way that meets everyone's needs who partners with us.
I agree. And one of the challenges that I call those coastal consultants, those consultants on the East and West Coast, sometimes they get really big and then they're trying to force their employees into the contract to meet somebody's needs, and their specialty may not be correct, but then now they're in charge of whatever in the contract. And because of the way we've set up our business, you can pick specialists specifically for the work that we have ahead of us. And I find that to be a real value add for our customers.
Absolutely.
And we're more nimble, more flexible, and can kind of ride the waves of consulting a little easier, not having a big overhead and taking every project that may not make it. So it was a really good conversation, and just thinking about like how you have a business set up and why you do it the way you do. And so Rural Policy Partners, some people are like, well, why didn't you just do a bunch of employees? Well, in consulting that there's waxes and wanes. And again, you'd have to make sure that person matched every contract. And I've watched that not work so many times that I wanted a much more nimble plan. So this works really good. So anyway, it was a really fun conversation. And then Jason, we had another collaboration this summer with the Healthcare Collaborative. So talk about what happened there.
Absolutely. Iowa Healthcare Collaborative contacted us because they love this podcast. And they had a special project that they wanted us to do specifically around critical access hospitals. And that's where we've been doing a lot of public speaking. This whole summer, we've been traveling, and we'll talk about the 5 states we've been in so far this summer. 3 of those were specifically around talking with executives at critical access hospitals around behavioral health. And so Iowa Healthcare Collaborative said, we like what you're doing. And so we did a special 3-series set for them where we sat and talked, really talking to, and when we'll link this podcast for you all to listen in on as well, really talking to executives, CEOs, board members, and community members around their small rural hospitals.
Right. And it's an interesting group of people, because if you're in charge or you're the person at those hospitals, you might be the one person that does what you do at that hospital. And it can be very isolating. It can feel very lonely and kind of in your own little bubble, especially in leadership. And the challenges that are facing hospitals are the same, even if you're in different states. And so for us, it's nice to be able to pull together some themes that hospitals can use regardless of the rural state that you're in, and help you kind of feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself and you're not alone dealing with the struggles. Because we haven't found, I mean, everybody feels like they're unique, but the struggles we keep seeing at critical access hospitals are pretty similar.
Across a whole bunch of states, it's been the same conversation that I seem to be having over and over again. But I think that's a great podcast. I think, thinking about, that's kind of our business goals, right? As we
Yeah.
think about how do we partner, how do we collaborate? That's one of the pillars of what we do, is collaboration. And so here we are, we found a great connection with the Healthcare Collaborative. And it was just a really exciting project. So I'm really
Really
happy
was.
we got the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Before I do the recap, I want to talk about our self-care politician policy of the week. And what's fun about travel is I really enjoy travel, but for self-care, for us, it's important to take breaks and stop along the way. I don't know about you, but I'm too old to just sit in a car for 6, 8 hours. And the places we go, we'll talk more about this in the next segment, but you can't really get there by airplane. That's
Nope.
part of who we are, is that rural partner. So there's a lot of time in the car. So for my self-care is taking breaks. And I mean, on the way to South Dakota, we took a couple of great breaks. So
Yep.
Jason, talk to us about the breaks that we took and how we able to get out of the car and take care of ourselves.
This is a curveball. I didn't know we were going to talk about
Well,
that here.
I-
You're right. So, well, we started, this was the vegetable tour,
The vegetable tour,
I think
yes.
is how I coined it. And so, yeah, on our way up here to South Dakota, we had to go around the flooding. And so we stopped in Blue Earth, Minnesota, where you could see the 60-foot Jolly Green Giant.
I've
And
never
if,
seen it. How have I lived this long and
if
not
you
seen
haven't,
the
and so you'll
Jolly
see
Green
it, you'll see a picture of that in the show notes as well.
Giant?
We also got to stop at the Corn Palace. And I have to admit, as a Iowa row crop farmer, I had never been to the Corn Palace before.
How not? You're such a corn guy. How do you
I
not?
know. And so I actually had my corn t-shirt on. We stopped at the Corn Palace, learned all about the Corn Palace, the rotating themes, all kinds of things that I had no idea
Right.
about. It was just amazing. And so, when I think about self-care, we do this work so it's fun, right? That's how I partnered with Renee. It was because, you know what? If we're going to do this and we're going to take on the work we're going to do and we're going to travel, we're going to have to create fun out of it. It's going to have to be, not
Yeah.
just, fulfilling, what I want to gain, as an entrepreneur, but thinking about, how can I still find that work-life blend, not balance. And so this is just a great way to do that. So great restaurants, great stops, stopping at all of those just roadside America attractions that you only find when you drive through rural Americana.
Right. And now that we've done it, there's going to be, for all of you listeners out there, just wait. We've got some really great ideas now that we've done some remote podcasting. You may learn to regret this, but we're going to start remote podcasting from all kinds of cool locations. So this time, I mean, my self-care tip really is just break up those trips into some chunks. I know, I mean, Jason didn't talk about it today, but I know you've done a lot of driving, and we'll stop maybe and do like a 30-minute little hike at a location and kind of
Yep.
space it out along the way. So you kind of have a place so you can get out of the car, stop for a few minutes, walk around, or even do the hike or look at the thing or whatever, so that you're just not,
Hang on to part two, because we'll talk about the 5 states we've been to and we'll hit some of the key areas.
That's right, because we've been everywhere, man. Not talking about that. So today we're just a recap before we start diving into part two. What we talked about was just we've been out and about. We've been Jason's in the USA Today talking about farmer suicide. We're talking about business. We've been in the business spotlight in Des Moines and a podcast about how to run business. And if you're a person that's wanting to maybe move from solopreneur to a partnership, to maybe even moving out of that and kind of being owner, not the day-to-day operator, that's kind of the path that I've been on, talking about that. And then finally talking about our collaboration with the Healthcare Association. And you may be out there needing a collaboration, and we'd love to chat with you about that.